you. I'm going to make one quick change before we record. And so we are now recording. And welcome to Rockin' 2025. Turn the page on 2024 and it's time to grow our good. My name is Terry Maxwell. And by the way, these sessions that we do are free and open to the community as well as to our members. You don't have to be a member to attend these. We do about 3 sessions a month. We have a difference maker toolkit on Wednesday, November 13th, and authentic marketing on Tuesday, December 3rd. Please feel free to attend any of those events. What Shifco does is we train conscious entrepreneurs how to grow their business and maximize their impact. I'm hugely passionate about it. I go to bed at night thinking about how to help our members grow their business. I wake up in the morning thinking about ways to help our members grow their business. And it is truly my favorite thing to do in the world. My background, what makes me qualified to do that is I've had multiple large exits, so selling companies, including an IPO. In 2009, I sold my last business, started over with this crazy idea, started this portfolio of brands. It's like a purposeful Shark Tank called Share on Purpose. Share on Purpose has a speculator fund. So what that is we invest. That's the purposeful Shark Tank. So we invest in things like a zero waste makeup line, zero waste skincare. And then we also have what we call the cultivator, and the cultivator creates companies. And Shifco is company number 5. I am blessed with an amazing leadership team that run the majority of those companies for me so that I can do what I'm truly passionate about, which is Shifco. So that's what really makes me qualified for this passion to help you grow your good. And what do I mean by grow your good? Well, growing your good means that your business is growing financially, it's more profitable, but that you're also increasing your impact. Those things are not a trade-off. So it's not, I'm going to do good in the world and hope I make some money, or I'm going to make some money and hope I do some good. We believe that you can do both equally. And there's 5 truths that I've learned. Number 1 is there's not a silver bullet or an easy fix. So what I'm not going to give you today is, oh, just do these 3 things and magically, boom, 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 your business will grow. I do not believe that. There's never a silver bullet. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 30 years now. I've been a conscious entrepreneur for 15. I'm telling you, there's not an easy fix and there's no silver bullet. Second thing is there's always, and I mean always, more than one gap to address in your business. And that's the hard part, is I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, and I need to do this. The challenge is, although there's always more than one gap to address, the key to growth is to focus on one of those, not all of them, but to focus on one of those. So this diagnostic tool that I'm going to put in front of you today is going to help you figure out what is that one gap so that you can pinpoint where you need to focus. Now, the other thing about these gaps, sometimes the gaps are symptoms. They're not really a root cause. We're going to try to help you with a series of questions really get to the root cause. Because if you run around fixing symptoms of problems, all you're going to do is wear yourself out. So we're going to try to help you get to that root cause. And then lastly is our business grows as we evolve. So there's always an element of being called up to a higher level, better work-life balance, better mindset, learning how to keep your amygdala so that it's healthy and it's not working against you. So that learning how to be a better leader, taking accountability. Yesterday, after a stressful week, I lost my cool with a couple of team members and I had to go back to them and apologize for losing my cool. That's an example of our business grows as we evolve. So these 5 truths are all really important, but I want to focus in on this gap and why it is so important. The biggest, and I mean biggest, breakthrough that I've had as an entrepreneur is when I stopped trying to fix multiple things at one time and I just zeroed in on one gap. Why that matters is when we're experiencing challenges in our business, we get frustrated. We feel like we're failing. We feel like an imposter. And then we start to chase these symptoms. Then we get defocused and the business loses momentum. And if that's happened to you, raise your hand. Like it's happened to me. It still happens to me. I want to take my own advice here, and I want to really focus on one gap. So it's time for a change. And what I have found, both for myself and for the hundreds of ShiftCo members that I train and coach, that knowing that one thing yourself makes it not only easier to address it, but you gain more confidence more quickly because you know that's the number one gap. And if I just address this one gap, then the business will move forward. So we're going to change that today with this diagnostic exercise. One point of reference, and where that point of reference is, where are these challenges coming from? So we all have challenges. I have 5 businesses. They all have challenges in them. Well, where they are coming from is this well-known yet hidden secret that there are 2 opposing forces, and I mean opposing forces in every business. And these forces are literally working against each other until the business gets 5 million in revenue. These 2 opposing forces are wrestling with you constantly. And that's what creates the multiple business gaps, which cause us to lose focus. And then we get demotivated. And we all have been on this hamster wheel in our business where, oh, it's working. No, it's not. Oh, it's working. No, it's not. Oh, it's working. No, it's not. Well, that's because of these 2 opposing forces. These 2 opposing forces simply are supply and demand. And these 2 forces, much like a seesaw, put pressure on you and the business. And the center of the seesaw, that little piece of metal, is called the fulcrum. So you'll hear me talk about fulcrums on these 2 pressure points. And I mean pressure is, if you just think about a seesaw and somebody gets on the seesaw, they're putting pressure on that fulcrum. And the seesaw is going to tilt, and then somebody gets on the other side and it tilts back. Well, if one person is heavier than the other, it's out of balance. The same is true in your business. These forces are opposing you until your business gets to around 5 million in revenue. The 2 forces are demand, which is how much revenue that you have every month, and supply, which is how are you servicing those customers through inventory or service capacity, which tie back to time, money, and resources. So as we go through this gap analysis that I'm going to walk you through, remember, I don't want you multitasking because I'm going to move through these and have you do the assessment through a series of questions here in a minute. But they all come back to these 2 opposing forces. So I'll come back to these after we get through the examples, but I want you to remember that you're always feeling the battle between these 2 forces. There's either not enough time, not enough cash, not enough resources, and or there's not enough revenue to balance your fulcrum. Okay, so where do we start? Before we go through the analysis exercise, I just want to set it up. Number 1 is I want you to make a decision today. And a decision is heads in it, hearts in it, bodies in it. Growing my impact matters more than my FUD. If you don't know what FUD is, it stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. We all have fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Decide that growing your impact, making a bigger difference in the world, matters more than your fear, your uncertainty, and your doubt. Secondly, I want you to decide, mind, heart, body, you can do it. But what comes with that is that you're going to have to focus. And I mean focus. And the third thing is today, I'm going to show you how to decide where to focus. What is the one gap that if you address that one gap, the business would move forward? So just take a minute. We're going to take a breath. Feel those decisions in your mind and in your heart and in your body. I'm deciding I'm going to grow my impact. It matters more than my FUD. I'm deciding that I can do it, and then I'm going to focus, and I'm going to decide today where to focus on that one gap. Take another breath. Here we go. So there's going to be 9 primary gaps that I'm going to walk you through. These 9 gaps map back to 3 areas. So an area is the broadest, and then the gaps are underneath the areas. Some of you, if you've been a member of ShiftCo, are going to recognize these primary areas. Don't skip over it because I'm going to go a lot deeper today than I've ever done. The first one is demand. I need to grow my revenue. So that's an area. Underneath that area are three potential gaps. Is it this, or is it this, or is it this? Area number two is supply, adding resources to scale. Underneath supply are three gaps. Third one is kind of fascinating, and that is you. And by you, I mean, are you stuck in FUD? Are you having trouble focusing? Do you wish your business was more fun? So underneath the you part, we're going to look at FUD, focus, and more fun. Now we're going to review these 9 gaps, and they're going to come with questions for you to explore. I'm obviously recording this so that you guys will have a copy of it, but I want you to go through the exercise as I go through each of these 3 areas and these 9 gaps. What you're going to do is you're going to write down the gaps that you are feeling in your business. Like, oh yeah, that's a problem. Oh yeah, that's a problem. And you're going to find that you're going to write down a lot of these gaps, but we're going to choose the one that will move our business forward, because we don't need to focus on 9 gaps. We don't even need to focus on 3 gaps. We need to choose one that will move our business forward. So let's get started first with demand. So the area that we're looking at is revenue growth and your total revenue. Okay, so underneath that are some potential gaps. The way that you grow your revenue is you manage 3 things: customer retention, referrals from your customer base, and new business. Sounds smart, right? Well, what are the gaps? Now we're going to get to the 3 gaps. There's 3 gaps. Do you have good retention? How do you know? Are you getting referrals? How do you know whether or not you could be getting more referrals? And then, do you have a new business demand generation strategy? So now what we've done is we've taken this one area, revenue growth, total revenue, demand. We've broken it into 3 gaps for sources of growth. And now I'm going to give you a series of questions for you to assess which of these gaps are you facing. So let's start with retention. How many of your customers return or purchase something else from you? Do you know? If you don't know, we got to figure that out. Can you grow that number? Guess what? That's one of the easiest ways to grow your revenue, is for your existing customers to purchase again, or to purchase more from you, or to purchase something different from you. Do you have a really good retention strategy where your customers continue to be a source of income? Referrals. What % of your revenue is based on referrals? How can you grow this? Again, if you don't know that, that's a very important number to know, because you want to look at that. The second best way to grow your business, retention, is number 1, where your customers purchase again and again, and they purchase more things. Referrals is number 2. The third potential gap is a new business demand generation strategy. Do you actually have a new business demand generation strategy? Now, I'm going to go deeper on this in a minute and show you how to analyze whether or not you have a new business demand generation strategy. But the first thing I want you to do is, which of these 3 gaps, so what I have in the blue box, those are the 3 gaps underneath the one area of demand. Which of those is a gap for you? Write it down. And I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to think about those questions on the right and to evaluate which of these you think is a gap. And while we're doing that over the next couple of minutes, does anybody have any clarifying questions about these first 3 gaps?
Terry, what if somebody writes down all of them? How
Totally
should they?
okay. Totally okay. Because remember, right, we're gonna do 9. This is just the first 3. We're gonna go deeper on these in a minute. This is just the first 3. At the end, we're gonna look at the list of all the gaps that you have. You might have 8 out of the 9. We're gonna choose 1, because we don't need to fix all 8. We need to find one that's gonna move our business forward. Here's the secret, guys. Success breeds success. When you feel your business moving forward, you get motivated again. You start to be a little more confident. When you feel like you're stuck and you're just beating your head against the wall, you lose your motivation, you defocus, and you lose your confidence. that choosing one thing and becoming really focused on that one thing, you feel the business move forward and your motivation goes up. So you absolutely could list all three. Lisa, thank you for asking that. While people are still diagnosing that, are there any other clarifying questions? We're going to go deeper on the demand generation strategy. We're going to break that down further. But I want to see if there's any questions so far.
I have a question, Terry. So
Yeah.
are we picking which one of these we're currently focusing most on, or which one sucks the most?
Which one do you think is a gap in your business? The if you will, the sucks the most. I love the word choice that you use there. We're going to get to that at the end, where we're going to choose the one out of all of them. This is just the first three. We've got 6 more to get into. But we'll choose the one, not just that sucks the most, Jonna, but the one that if we focused on it would cause our business to move forward. So if all 3 of these are problem, write down all 3. If only 2 are, write down 2. If you feel like I could be doing better at that, write it down. Other questions? That was a great one. Okay. So now we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're still in this one area and we're still on these 3 gaps, but we're going to now zero in on the demand part of this. So we're literally going to isolate just this one guy right here. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that your quickest, best, healthiest sources of revenue are retention and referrals. Get good at those. But you also want to have a good demand generation strategy in place. So now we're going to isolate, we're going to isolate demand and we're going to go, deeper on that. So now we're just talking about the one gap. It's not a set of new gaps. We're going to go deeper on just that one gap. Hey, Terry, I'm doing okay with retention. I could get better. I think I do okay on referrals, but I don't have a new business demand generation strategy. That's a gap for me. If that's a gap for you, we're going to go deeper on it. So there's 3 aspects of new business demand generation. Expanding awareness. It's the biggest problem of all businesses, every business, not just small business. The biggest challenge is getting more awareness. For small business, it's life or death in your new business demand generation. It's not selling. It's not closing. It's not ClickFunnels and lead magnets. It's getting more people aware of your business. The second sub gap in your new business demand generation strategy is what's called interest. Do I have more leads? Do I have more people interested in buying from me? I'm going to give you examples of both B2B and B2C because I know we have both on here. And then the third sub gap of a new business demand generation strategy is better sales conversion. Remember, this is just the one gap new business demand generation strategy, but there's 3 sub gaps underneath it. I'm going to give you some statistics because the high level being able to assess this is going to tell you where you need to focus. If you have a B2B brand, meaning you sell to businesses, Shifco is a B2B brand. I sell to other entrepreneurs. I need 10 to 100 people to become aware, what I call clicks or connects. Think about this for a second. I need 10 to 100 people to become aware in a B2B brand to get 2 to 5 leads that are interested. You can see right there why the biggest challenge in your business is awareness. You need a lot more awareness if you sell B2B, a lot more. It's even worse on B2C, as you'll see here in a minute. Of the 2 to 5 leads that are interested, if I'm good at conversion, I'm going to get 1 to 2 new sales. This is globally across all industries, very important. Globally across all industries, these are the statistics for a B2B brand. So what this is saying, I need 10 to 100 people to become aware of my business to get maybe 1, if on a good day, 2 sales. Now think about how much awareness you have today. Awareness could be your biggest gap in your new business demand generation strategy. If you sell to consumers, what's called a B2C brand, it's 100 to 1,000 clicks or exposures, awareness. Think about that to get 10 to 20 people that put a product in your cart that are interested to get 1 to 2 new sales. Whoa. If you're B2C, you need a heck of a lot more awareness than you have today. So you can see that 9 times out of 10, if the gap is a new business demand generation strategy, 9 times out of 10, the issue is awareness. Not always, but in a vast majority of the case. So we got to begin to measure that. And if new business demand generation strategy becomes the thing that is your primary gap that you're going to address, part of what you're going to have to do is really measure these things. Now, we're going to figure out here in a minute, well, if it's this, then what needs improvement? But I don't want you to lose sight of, we're still on this one gap. I'm going to circle back just so this doesn't get lost. So we're talking about if your gap is I need more revenue, are you, first of all, do you have a good retention strategy? Do you have a good referral strategy? And then next is the demand. Just in this demand area, all we've done is just broken this down and give you some data points so that you can assess where you think the gap might be. And then now we're going to talk about, well, what do you do about it? Before we do that, let me just put these up here. Before we talk about some questions to ask to know where to focus, I want to stop and see if anybody has any clarifying questions.
Terry,
And if
I
feeling-
have one.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Let's suppose I decide that this new business demand generation strategy is a weakness, but it's not that I don't have one. It's just not working as well as it needs to.
Great question. So in your case, it's like, I know the new business demand generation strategy is my number one gap. Is it awareness, interest, or conversion? Which of those 3? And so it's not fix the whole thing, right? It's sometimes I got to isolate, I need more leads or I need better conversion. And these statistics that I just walked you through are how you figure that out. So what you're thinking about is how much traffic do I have to my website? From that, am I getting an appropriate amount of leads? If I'm not, focus there. From the leads, am I getting an appropriate number of new sales? If not, focus there. So it's really about kind of breaking the focus down into the sub part of this. I need more awareness, I need more interest, or I need more conversion. So, no new business demand generation strategy, including in my own businesses, is ever working the way that I want. The key, though, is knowing where it's not working so that I know where to focus. Does that help you?
Yep.
Other questions before we go a little deeper on these 3 things? Now, you might be feeling a little stressed because we're putting things out there that I'm not tracking that. Don't worry about it. Just make a note of it, right? Or you're like, I'm not tracking. I don't even know what that means. Don't worry about it. Just write it down. Something we need to work on, because we don't need to fix it all. We just need to figure out what's the one thing that if we fix, the business would move forward. Don't let it stress you out. This is all stuff that you figure out over time. Now we're going to ask some questions. For awareness, do you know your target market? Do you know what you need to do to 3x your awareness, meaning to triple your awareness? Do you know how to do that? Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, a new business strategy isn't working because there's not enough awareness. So the key to that is to know, do I know where my target market is? Do I know who they are and where they are? Do I actually know how to triple the amount of awareness? By the way, if you triple your awareness, you can almost double your revenue. Let me say that again. If you can triple your brand awareness, triple the amount of people that know you exist, you can almost double your revenue. So do you know how to triple your awareness? If not, we want to flag that. Remember, these are sub gaps, right? So we want to flag that. Interest is really about differentiation. Do you talk about the problems you solve, or do you tell us what you do? So when you guys introduce yourself, did you introduce yourself based on what you do, or did you introduce yourself based on the problem you solve and the value that you provide? That's differentiation. A well-differentiated business, the founder can say, I I provide this value. My gift is this. The value I provide is that. This is, and it's about the value. It's not what you do. So if you're talking about what you do, it's going in one ear and out the other. And all that awareness that you might be generating is not likely to convert. Okay. So differentiation is really where interest comes in. On conversion, conversion is sometimes both a demand issue and sometimes it's also a differentiation issue. Well, first thing is, do you have a steady source of leads? If you don't have a steady source of leads, it isn't just a sales conversion problem, it's an interest problem. Now, how do you get a steady source of leads? You need ways to create what's called sampling. Sampling, this is sampling, by the way. You guys are getting a chance to attend one of our events and you're sampling what we do in Shiftco. And sampling is really important. It can be an infographic, it can be a tool, it can be a webinar, it can be a free consult. Sampling is really important to increase conversion. Also, you want to make sure you're showcasing the results that you're getting. So again, what we're looking at is if one of your gaps was new business, I need more new business. Then I gave you the data points. Is it an awareness issue? Is it an interest issue? Or is it a sales conversion issue? And now we're starting to diagnose that and say, wow, I don't know those things. I better write that down. I need, for my new business strategy, I need to expand awareness and I need to know how to do that. Diane, did you have a question?
Two questions. One is, how do you measure the 3 times awareness? And two, how do you showcase the results?
Great question. So I'm going to come back to this. The best ways to measure awareness is traffic to your website and or followers on whatever social channel you use. How many people are actually connected with you and following with you? That's what we call clicks or connects. The other thing is if you're a heavy networker, then how many people are you in front of? So if networking is one of the strategies that you use, it doesn't always show up on your website and it doesn't always show up on your LinkedIn followers or Instagram or whatever you use. Sometimes it's just, hey, I networked with 10 people this week. Next week I networked with 50. Just keeping track of about how many people that you network with. So the 2 best ways to track awareness is Google Analytics or some analytics package. How many users are coming to your website? Secondly, another way to track awareness is how many followers and connections do you have? The other way to do it, if it's a little more manual, you could just simply kind of guess each week, each month, how many people did I meet at a networking event? Or if you're a speaker, how many people was I in front of this month on average? That would be an example of doing that. Does that answer your question, that first question, Diane? Diane?
Sorry,
you guys-
I'm on mute because I'm coughing. Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Okay, and then remind me what the second question was?
It was about the showcasing the results.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to do it. And it has a lot to do with what your sales model is. I like having what I call power stories. And a power story is rather than tell somebody how great you are, you just simply have a couple of stories that when you're closing that opportunity, you say, this reminds me of my friend Elizabeth, and here's what Elizabeth and I did together, and this is the results that she got. So I like doing it through stories. You can also put the results on your website. And you can also create like little case studies. So stories, putting actual measuring results and putting it on your website. And third would be creating like a little case study and having that be on your website or having that be a handout. I spoke in front of this organization, 50 people attended, and here was the reviews that I got in terms of the value that I provided. That would be an example. Other questions? That was a great question. Ooh, take a breath. Shake off the stress. All we're doing is figuring out where we're going to focus. There's tons of gaps, guys. Don't let it stress you out. We're looking for the thing that is going to cause the business to move forward. Diane, another question.
Another question, what if you're really bad at converting sales?
Then that's where you need to focus, right?
Okay.
So you're going to write that down as a gap. I used to be bad at converting sales as well. Now I'm pretty darn good at it because
Is that-
what?
does that stay here, or does that stay in the FUD category?
Well, great question. Oh my gosh, music to my ears. Do you think it's a FUD issue, or do you think it's I need to learn how to do it? Or is it both?
Both.
Then you're going to write down both. In a minute, when we write down all these gaps, then we're going to figure out, well, where do I really need to focus first? That was great distinction. Other questions before we go into the second area of gaps? Okay, so under the gap of revenue, under the area of revenue, there's 3 gaps: retention, referrals, and new business. 3 gaps. Underneath new business, there's 3 potential sub gaps. So we're still just dealing with new business. I don't want you to get confused of that. But we're going to focus on which of these do we really need to work on. Okay. Now we're going to move to the second area. So we've made a list of the gaps we need to work on for this area of growing revenue. The second area is supply, resources to scale. Remember that friction, right? This is where we get really burned. I don't have enough revenue to hire the people that I need. Uh-oh. I don't have enough cash to hire the people I need because I don't have enough revenue. That's the fulcrum. And this is the thing. This is a root cause of why businesses struggle until they get around 5 million, is this supply and demand. It's tough. These are opposing forces. So now a scalable business means the supply side is also managed. So we know from what we just discovered, the vast majority of people have a lot of gaps in demand gen. It's very common. But there's also some supply issues that we need to address as well. The primary tools to address the scalability on the supply side are resources and time. When I say resources, there's 3 gaps. I don't have enough cash. The second set of gaps are people, tools, and process. But if it's a time, I don't have enough time. You are in the most difficult fulcrum there is, called the time fulcrum. And guess what? That's going to pop up to the top. Here are some questions that you can ask yourself. If you don't have enough cash, it's almost always because your business isn't profitable enough and you're not priced fairly. Hard thing to accept. As conscious entrepreneurs, we always underprice and undervalue our worth. Always. It's a hallmark of a conscious business. I do it. Shifco members do it. We're always working on this. So if you have a cash issue, it's usually not a cash issue. It's usually a profitability and a pricing issue. So we want to look at that. People, tools, and process. Do you have the right people? Do you know what the roles are that you need? Do you have the right tools? Can you delegate properly? Sometimes it's not about having that freelancer. Sometimes it's about knowing how to delegate to that freelancer. So you can see that could be a gap. And if it's time is your big gap, you're in a fulcrum. And if you do not address that time fulcrum, the business will not grow. So again, take a look at these 3 gaps. Which of these are gaps in your business? And again, if it's all 3, write down all 3. It doesn't matter, because we're not, it's not a quest to see how few gaps we have. It's a quest to really understand what the gaps are so that we then can prioritize. So we're going to take a couple of minutes for you to think about those 3 gaps so that you can write down the ones that are gaps for you. And while that's happening, I'll take a couple of questions.
So Terry, I'm curious, when you're in the time fulcrum, can you share like an example of what the thoughts would be or what the experience would be for someone in a time fulcrum?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do that next, Michelle.
Okay.
So if you can just sit tight, I'm going to actually cover that so that you'll know what it looks like.
Perfect.
Other questions while we're waiting for people to do their own diagnosis?
I have a question, Terry. So
Yeah.
as I think I'm currently in like a gap where there's not quite enough cash to delegate the right things to the right people because I've been putting the processes in place, but they're not quite working as efficiently as possible at this point. Which makes it so I don't have a lot of time because I'm spending the time trying to make the processes in place so that they work. So is that just saying, oh yeah, all three of them have a gap, or is there a way to kind of figure out which one of these is really the bottleneck on that?
Yeah, great question. So if it were me, I would write down all three. But remember, in a minute, we're going to choose, after we go through all 9, we're going to choose the one that we really need to move forward. Sometimes it's really about accepting imperfection. This is one of the hardest things that I find in business. Sometimes I have to be okay with the messiness of it. Because getting through these 3 fulcrums we're going to talk about in a minute, it's messy. And I want it to be perfect and I want it to be right. But guess what? You know, there's going to be errors, there's going to be mistakes, things are going to break, you're going to lose clients. You have to be okay with the fact that it's messy and it's not quite there. You also have to be okay with the fact that, you know, you can only do so much at one time, which is why it's so important to focus. And you're going to kind of like, when you push stuff in the closet because you don't really have time to really clean the house and you're just pushing stuff in the closet. Sometimes you have to do that in your business. You have to just set it aside. And like, I can't address this now. It's just going to have to be okay for what it is. So in your case, I would say write down the ones that you feel like, yeah, I think that's a gap. But remember, choosing one and focusing on addressing one is the faster path than trying to fix all of them at one time.
Okay. So
Other questions? That was a great one.
Yeah,
I
so
clarify
Terry, oops.
that a little?
Go ahead, Dr. Michelle.
Oh, no, she needs to clarify, so I'll go after she clarifies it.
Yeah, I just
Go
had
ahead.
like a quick little clarifier on that. So I think for me in this that I have been setting up processes that will give me lots of time back once they're working well. So I don't think I want to just shove that into the back corner and be like, let's not fix this, because it will actually make it work a lot easier. And I've spent a lot of time and effort making them, setting them up. So I'm curious, like, would that mean that more of the focus is here and that it's worth like putting the effort into it?
It could, but it also could be it's going to take you longer than you'd like because it's not going to be good right out of the gate. You might have a really good process, but people can't follow it. That's frequently things that I find in my own business. It's very clear to me, but other people can't follow it. And so it always takes longer than I would like because there's the development of the process, and then there's the delegation of the process, and then there's the discovery of what didn't work, and then there's the changing of it to make it more simple or easier to follow. That, you know, can be a beating sometimes. So sometimes it's not just that you did it or you didn't. It's the evolution and the tweaking of it over time that is the challenge.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Michelle?
Yeah, so as I'm sitting and I'm looking at this, what I'm realizing is that I'm wondering if mine falls into an OO, because the cash is coming in, but what I'm realizing is that I am trying to diversify what I'm doing in terms of the supply so much that I'm burning up the cash and the time.
Yep.
So yeah, and I'm thinking, why can't I just stay with this one thing and not try to do all those things? So would that be all 3, or will that just be supply managed?
Well, let's take a look at what we mean by time. and resources, because that may clear that up for you. So the first fulcrum, remember the fulcrum is the center of, it's that piece of metal on a seesaw that balances the seesaw. It's the highest pressure point. It's not the board or the plastic. It's that typically it's a piece of metal or hard plastic that it looks like a triangle upside down that balances the fulcrum, because these are two opposing forces, supply and demand, always opposing you. They're always fighting each other. When you're in the launch phase, you are in the time fulcrum. So your revenue is 0 to 10K a month. And the beating is time. There's not enough time. And the way that that shows up is get the work, do the work. Uh-oh, no work. Get the work, do the work. Uh-oh, no work. It's very, very frustrating. And progress and profit don't occur in a straight line. It's like a giant roller coaster of ups and downs. It's working, no, it's not. It's working, no, it's not. Because there's not enough hours in the day to get everything done, which is why focus is so important. So if it feels like there's not enough time, if you're truly in a time fulcrum, your revenue is going to look like that green line. Oh, look, we had a great month. Uh-oh, we don't have enough. Oh, it's up. No, it's not. It's going to see this ups and downs, and it's just this roller coaster ride of ups and downs. That the time fulcrum typically shows up 0 to 10K. Sometimes it carries over into above 10K where it's still a time fulcrum. But when it feels like there's not enough time, it's almost always because there's not enough time. And that's why it's so important to focus. And sometimes you have to just say, I'm not going to perfect this thing over here. I'm going to focus on this thing over here. It's going to be a little messy for a while. I'm going to need to be patient because I'm in a time fulcrum, and I don't like that I'm in a time fulcrum, but I'm in a time fulcrum. Questions about that before we look at the second fulcrum you'll experience, which happens between 10 to 30K a month. Diane?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Any questions about this first fulcrum?
Maybe not then.
No, it would definitely not, because I'm in a webinar for another 10 minutes.
Hang on
Okay,
one
sorry
second, Diane,
about
put
that.
yourself on
No
mute.
problem.
Sometimes the timing, I'm not quite sure.
Hold on, let me
whether
get
it's
Diane
your
on mute there.
time or
I called you this morning.
Hold on, Diane.
no, it's okay. It's all right, fine. You okay?
I am okay. I figured out how to do that thumbnail.
Okay, sorry, guys. All right, so any questions on the time fulcrum before we look at the second fulcrum that you're going to see in your business? The time fulcrum kills 50 to 60% of most people who start a business. They can't get past this and they quit and they go get a job and that type of stuff. It's why most businesses don't get above 10K, is they can't get through the time fulcrum. For those that get through the time fulcrum, you're actually going to hit the hardest fulcrum. The time fulcrum isn't the hardest. The resource fulcrum is the hardest. And that happens 10 to 30K a month. This is the most difficult phase. It has repeated ups and downs. I call it Groundhog Day. I absolutely despise this phase because what happens is it just wears you out because it's working. No, it's not. The dips aren't as severe, but they're more frequent. Revenue, oh, it's up, no, it's not. And it's this constant, loops, and you just feel like you're stuck in these loops. It's very, very difficult. It will literally feel like Groundhog Day. And the resource fulcrum almost always happens between 10 to 30K. When we say resources, what we mean is cash, people, tools, and time. So you're experiencing in the resource fulcrum all of them at the same time. Whereas in the time fulcrum, it really is time that is most scarce. In the resource fulcrum, it's cash, people, process, tools, and time. And so you'll feel this Groundhog Day, and it is really challenging to get your business through this phase. And if this feels like where your challenge is, we'll talk about how we fix that. For those of you that are ShiftCo members, we'll talk about how you fix that. But just pay attention. If you're here, this is a tricky phase. It's not fun. The third one is from 30K and beyond. This is the leadership fulcrum. the leadership fulcrum is going to feel like climbing stairs. It's still very hard. So I love to work out. I don't like to climb stairs. And you just think about those of you that work out, like, oh gosh, those, I'm running up the stadium stairs, or I'm on the Stairmaster, and it's a good workout and it works out all your muscles and you can feel it, but it's hard. This also is a hard phase, because there's the leadership side of things that has to occur. Not as bad as the second fulcrum, which is the resource fulcrum, and the time fulcrum, but still challenging. It will feel like climbing stairs. So those are the three fulcrums. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back for just a second to this diagnostic. And what I want you to do here is to think about the gaps. Write down, is it a cash gap? Is it people, tools, process, or is it time? And then write down which of those three fulcrums you think you might be in if it feels like this is an area where you're feeling gaps. Questions about that before we go to the final area, which is you. Okay. Take a minute, just keep breathing. Now we're going to look at the third area of these gaps, and that is you. FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Focus, you have a hard time focusing, or I'm not really sure I enjoy my business. So we're going to look at each of these. And what we're looking for here is, do you feel in your power? What does that mean? What that means, there's two powers in your business where you're either affecting your business, so I'm making changes, or you're at effect of your business. You're the kind of the proverbial tail wagging the dog. I'm at effect of my business. You can't be at effect of your business if you want to be successful. You have to affect your business, which is why this diagnostic method is so important. So do you feel in your power? What does that look like? Well, we're going to self-assess. Is it a focus issue or is it fear? These are two very different things, but they get confused all the time. Focus is, I'm bouncing around from this to this to this to this, and I'm worried about that, and you're kind of all over the map. Sometimes what causes a focus issue is fear. But if that focus is a pattern, it's not just fear, it's that you need to work on focus. Fear is you're paralyzed by fear. You have negative self-talk. You beat yourself up constantly. So assess that, and then let's look at the three gaps. If it's focus, it's either mindset. You don't know how to control and manage your thoughts and emotions. That's what mindset is. Mindset is the ability to manage your thoughts and emotions. That's mindset. So I'm using my mind as a muscle. I'm recognizing that I feel afraid. I'm recognizing that I'm thinking negative thoughts and I'm changing it. Your mindset is affecting things. Energy is, are you investing in your energy? Do you feel balanced? Do you really enjoy what you're doing? Or is it just draining you? If your business is draining your energy, you're going to have a focus issue, hands down. And then on the fear side, you got to own the fear. What fear is holding you back? You face the fear and it will disappear. What fear is holding you back? Is it fear that you're not good enough? Is it fear of rejection? Is it fear of failure? Own that fear. So just like we did before, three gaps under this area of you. Which of these needs improvement? And I'll take a couple of minutes, take any questions, and then we're going to go through the process of figuring out the one thing that we need to address from all those gaps. What's the one thing that we need to address? Any questions before we do that?
Carrie, I have one question. What if, so I'm a service-based model, but for anyone, it could be service, product, whatnot. Where would it fall if I know that I need and want to tweak my service? Is that within number 5, process?
Well, believe it or not, that is usually not a root cause of your business not being where it is, because that is something that you can just do.
Mhm.
And the question that you want to look at is is it a differentiation issue? Is it a positioning issue? And is it causing you to lose sales, or is it causing you to do things you don't enjoy? So I try to help you get underneath that the modifying the services and modifying your target market is certainly something you need to do. The question is, why do you need to do it? Is it because people don't want what I have? That's a demand generation issue, and we got to look at it through a demand lens. Is it's not profitable enough? If so, we got to look at it through that lens. Or is it I don't enjoy it? If so, we got to look at it through this lens. Does that make sense?
Yes, I'd say in my unique circumstance, it's the last. I don't
Okay.
enjoy quite the model just yet. Yeah.
All right. And this is a great example. This is what I call the why behind the what. What I'm teaching you is how to find the why behind the what. The what is I want to change my services. The question is why. If it's that I don't really enjoy this, that's a totally different way to approach it than just going in and changing your services. Because if it's not profitable enough, I'm going to change it this way. If it's that, people don't want to buy it, I'm going to change it that way. But if I don't really enjoy it, that's a totally different way to tackle it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank
Other
you.
questions?
So just more of a commentary. So as we're thinking about, how I can evolve or keep stuck, I'm realizing that my issue is focus, which is what I was alluding to earlier on. And as I look at the gaps, it doesn't seem as though it's so much of a mindset, but as I listen to you, I'm realizing it is a growth mindset. And the
Yep.
growth mindset in terms of me being stubborn and not listening to folks that are saying you need to focus on just this and not diversify and try to do all those things because it becomes too amorphous. And as I look at this, I'm thinking, oh my God, they were right.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the growth mindset, and it feels less than my thoughts and emotions, but it is the thought that I know better when I don't.
Oh, wow. I love the self-awareness there. Great job.
Yeah. Thank you. This is great.
Okay. So now let's look at that list. And it's not you. We all have a long list. I have been doing this. I have almost going on my third decade as an entrepreneur, 15 years almost as a conscious entrepreneur. I got a long list for my business. I got a long list for Shiftco. Which one, if addressed, would move your business forward? That's what we want to know. Because a lot of times, if you address one, which you heard Dr. Michelle just talk about, if I just address this, I'll bet you it'll solve 3 of these others. Or if I just address that, I'll bet you it'll solve some of these. Like let's use retention on the demand side. Maybe you're over here focusing all your energy on a new business demand generation strategy. If you just worked on retention or referrals and got more of those, it would cause your revenue to go up, which would free you up then to get better at a new business demand generation. So you really want to look at this whole picture, because you're going to have a long list. Everybody does. But which one of these do you think would move your business forward? I'm going to talk through what I mean by that. But that work is really where your work is. It's identifying the gaps and then going through each of those gaps and saying, which one of these is really going to cause me to move my business forward? Now, what I mean by that is what's required to be successful as an entrepreneur is 2 things. Again, going on my third decade as an entrepreneur, what I learned in my first business that I failed so miserably at was that the most common denominator of a successful entrepreneur is perseverance. Just freaking refuse to quit. That's what got me through that first business. I failed for 2.5 years. My third year, I made a little bit of money, but I just refused to quit. The coach that I was working with, she helped me not quit. And then the second breakthrough was this focus. It is not a great idea that causes a business to be successful. I'm going to go back to this investment that we have in Your Izzy. It's my favorite product in the world. World's first sustainable makeup and skincare line, 100% zero waste. I love it. This business, as great as the idea is not going to be successful unless the founder has an obsessive focus of doing a few things well. My mantra is do fewer things better. So this, if you want to be successful as a founder, tap into that well of perseverance, refuse to quit. But you also have to develop an obsessive focus, and I mean obsessive focus on doing a few things well. That's what causes you to be successful. Now, I'll wrap up with a couple of tips. Note every gap and think about what the potential root cause of it is. Like, take the time to really think this through. Second, which one, if addressed, would not fix everything? Really hear this point number 2. Which one, if you addressed it, would move the business forward? It is the progress, not perfection, that causes motivation to go up and causes clarity to get enhanced. It's feeling the business move forward. And then third is, why is it a gap? What are you missing? What could you be missing? What could it be? And then just commit to changing it. For those of you that are ShiftCo members, what I want you to do is I want you to email me and your mentor as you're figuring out this gap. And you're going to get a special group to address this gap. If you're a current ShiftCo member or you joined this year, you're going to be in a special group to tackle this gap so you don't take your eye off the ball. Okay. And so do the analysis, figure out what it is. If you're not sure what it is, meet with your mentor. And when you know this is the gap that I want to address, you're going to email me and your mentor, and we're going to put you in a special mastermind group to focus on that gap. Questions about that?
Yes, Terry, just say thank you. This was, oh my God. I mean, this is just the soul feels soothed, right? When you know you have a direction and a path, that actually helps a lot. So having that, I whittled it down to 2. And being a ShiftCo member, I'll work with my mentor would be the next step to get it down to 1. As I said,
Get it down to 1.
Okay.
That's right. And then when you know the 1, you're going to email me.
Perfect.
And your mentor. Other questions? Okay, just as a reminder, we have another event on November 13th called the Difference Maker Toolkit. What that's going to show you is how is ShiftCo getting the results that we're getting. The Difference Maker Toolkit is going to show you what that is. And then authentic marketing, if that new business strategy, you know, that would be a good free event for you to attend. I've really enjoyed working with you guys today and exploring these gaps. I hope that you benefit greatly from this work, and I look forward to helping you in any way that I can grow your good.